The NFL did not want to see the Denver Broncos do what they just did on this 2-game win streak. I can tell you the Vegas Raiders didn't want to see it. The Kansas City Chiefs didn't want to see it. Nobody in the AFC wanted to see it. The reporters who picked us to win 5 games, who said we had no talent on defense, who said Pat Surtain was the only good defensive player we had, who said the game had passed Sean Payton by, over and over, all this lazy slander that they had ChatGPT write up based on last year's analytics has just shown to be an absolute house of cards. And as the advanced analytics come out and show us how good this Denver Broncos team is and how sustainable it is and how truly we haven't even come close to seeing the ceiling for this Denver Broncos team, and yet have knocked off 2 playoff contenders back-to-back on the road, 11 o'clock games. Sean Payton has a streak to break, and that streak is going to break this week. It is not since before COVID 2019 that the Denver Broncos last beat our divisional opponent in the Vegas Raiders, an opponent Mike Shanahan owned. They were our little brother who we beat up on all the time, but it has been far, far too long. Later on in this week, I'm going to break down exactly why I'm not afraid of the Raiders. Today, we're going to focus on some of the advanced analytics that show you why you should be so hyped up about the Broncos. But I'm telling you, this Raiders team is a far cry from what they've been over the past couple seasons, and we match up extremely well with them as we don our new throwback jerseys for the first time. But it was not since Shelby Harris. You remember Shelby Harris, the king of batted balls, knocking down an extra point attempt. I remember, I think, a game against the Chargers, and then he knocked down a 2-point pass from Carr to beat them for the last time. 2019, that streak ends this week as we are going to beat the Vegas Raiders. Here is why I feel so confident about that. First thing, everyone is slandering Bo Nix. All my fantasy chat all the time is like texting me at halftime, I have more passing yards than Bo Nix has at half. If you watch that game, you saw that Bo Nix outplayed Aaron Rodgers. And while Aaron Rodgers, ended up throwing for 200 or something yards that game, he also took 5 sacks and never got into the end zone. And you saw like the vibes that he gave off, the leadership or lack thereof that he gave off, throwing his head coach under the bus, getting combative with him. But even on the field, you saw our rookie quarterback have a higher QBR with a less talented receiving core than Aaron Rodgers did. And the fact that he took 5 less sacks, that is massive. Sean Payton said that was one of his biggest things in a quarterback was they got to get the ball out on time, and that he cares more about avoiding sacks than he does even throwing interceptions. That's how important it is to him. In the offseason, he went down and broke down just how often, if a drive has a sack in it, that it gives you a 20% less chance of scoring points whatsoever on that drive, regardless of when that sack comes. If you take a sack, you are way less likely to get in the end zone, and that is job number 1 for a quarterback. So he would have taken Bo Nix's performance over Aaron Rodgers' performance any day of the week. You saw that he had tremendous trust in him. That game against Tampa, he was on schedule to throw the ball 50 times as a rookie in his 3rd game, yet we were up so big we ran the ball. Even as that game was dwindling away and you would think, oh, hand that ball off 3 times. How many times was the ball just in Bo Nix's hands? The quarterback sneak there at the end, the play action pass, it just showed tremendous amounts of trust in him, and that trust is unwavering. Seeing Cortland Sutton get the first throwing touchdown of the year and seeing immediate respect there, that he's not spiking the ball, he's not dancing, he's not celebrating, he's giving that ball to Bo Nix saying, hey, here's your first touchdown in the NFL. That shows the type of leader that Bo Nix is, and I don't think that happens if you have other quarterbacks. I think you have a me too or a me first type mentality. Me too would be very, very different. Thankfully, we have none of that either. We have a team first mentality on this team, and it comes from Bo Nix, and that is something you can be really, really excited about. Next reason you got to be so excited, and nobody saw this coming outside of Denver. We all saw it coming. Pat Surtain is the best corner in the league, full stop. If you take a look, he has faced incredible wide receiving threats through these first 4 games, and you could not do a better job if you were in Madden and had a 100-rated player. He has just had the best receivers on lockdown, that through 4 games, the best receivers in football have had less than 100 yards receiving. That's just a wild stat that Sometimes there have been times that I remember the Kittle game against San Francisco a couple years ago where he had 200 yards at half. He has locked down the best receivers in the game, covering DK Metcalf. We saw him go off last night for the Seattle Seahawks. Pickens, have seen him get his numbers. Mike Evans, Garrett Wilson, all these players who played an elite level, he has had them on complete lockdown, and that should have you insanely excited. The other thing of why this is so good is this is not beating the Carolina Panthers. This is not beating the Cleveland Browns. We are 2-2, and our opponents are 11-4. And if you take out the games that we account for 4 of those losses, our opponents are 9-2. We have played playoff teams for these first 4 games, and we've been in one-score games in all of the games that we lost. That should have you insanely hyped. Next thing is just seeing how Vance Joseph has drawn up pressure from all over the place, that it is not relying on a TJ Watt. It's not relying on a Myles Garrett. It is a platoon of guys, and it is scheme, and it's the pressure comes from here, and then it's here, and it's Cooper, and it's Allen, and it's everywhere. And it's really cool to see the gamble that we made on PJ Locke pay off. PJ Locke, we knew, was a team-first guy just in how he handled himself last year with that game with Detroit, driving himself out there when he wasn't medically cleared to hop on an airplane because he wanted to be at that game and play in it. And we saw that he had the second fastest sack by a safety all season long, that he got to the quarterback so insanely fast, 2.88 seconds. And, to have that type of pressure, knowing that we also saw an incredibly fast sack from Justin Strnad as well. And quarterbacks that don't know where it's coming from, they're seeing ghosts out there because we are in the backfield all day long. And now we have a chance here where we get to play against a banged-up Herbert in 2 weeks. And we're playing Gardner Minshew next week, probably without Devontae Adams. So not only is the talent of the receiving core from here on out way easier, but the talent of the quarterback is also taking a tremendous step back, and that should have you insanely hyped. Just looking here as more and more of the train is coming off the track with the Vegas Raiders. We saw the Vegas Raiders head coach call out the entire team after they lost to one of the worst teams over the past several years in the Carolina Panthers. He said, a lot of players out there have been making business decisions, and so now we're going to make business decisions as well. So their best defensive player didn't even show up at the home game for them to play this week, and that's Max Crosby. You juxtapose that with Alex Singleton wearing a full compression leg sleeve for a torn ACL in the Broncos, in the Jets end zone, hyping up players. He could have flown home. Instead, he's in the most isolating situation where you have a season-ending injury and you are still out in a nasty, rainy conditions when you could be home, playing Madden on your PS5 or whatever. Like, the difference in leadership that you see with Alex Singleton staying with the team, being on the field, hyping up your team, versus what you saw with Crosby not even show up for a home game. And then you saw their head coach go out and like a post that said Devontae Adams played his last game for the Vegas Raiders. A lot of people have been spinning that, saying like, oh, well, he liked it because he just thought it was hilarious and there's no way that happens. Well, if you do that, you probably text your boy and say, hey, man, how whack is all of this kind of stuff? Kay Adams had Devontae Adams on her show, and he's like, yeah, I still haven't heard from coach or anybody on the team in several days. And she's like, well, I hope you hear from your coach today. And he said, yeah, me too. This is a hard situation to talk about. So the culture between the Raiders and the Broncos couldn't be different. The talent also couldn't be different. We have a much more talented team, and we have a together hungry team. And that is going to show on Sunday for sure. Another reason you should be crazy hyped is Bo Nix's ability to get rid of the ball. That is the number one thing for Sean Payton. And the Broncos have had at least one sack in almost 60 consecutive games, and now we have gone 2 games in a row without letting up a sack, and that's even more impressive when you consider the New York Jets actually coming into this week's game were the number 1 pass rush win rate in the entire NFL. That is a very stout front four. They get to the quarterback. They couldn't get to Bo Nix. A massive shout out to our offensive line, but also to Bo Nix for making the decisions. And yeah, he only had 60 yards completion in the air, completing the ball. But a lot of that is because he's throwing it away when no one's there, because he knows live to play another down with this defense. we're in really, really good shape. Just looking here that Bo Nix through these first 4 games has only been pressured on 8%, or 8% of his, he's been sacked on 8% of his pressures this season. You compare that to Russell Wilson, 20% last season. All of this just has me so excited for what is to come. This is not what anyone wanted when they picked us to win 5 games. It shows how lazy, how disconnected they are from what is actually happening. And I know the Denver Broncos are going to make the playoffs this year because this was one of our toughest stretches of the entire year. And the future is looking bright, and that is something we can all, believe in. Come on.